Welcome back to terminology I have come across when revising for my abnormal psychology exam, and I felt like going into them and doing a whole video on them. And there are 8 terms. The first one is continuum. A continuum is the idea that a characteristic or condition exists on a spectrum or range rather than as 2 distinct categories, e.g. normal versus abnormal. In psychopathology, mental health and mental illness are viewed as existing along a continuum, with people varying in severity of symptoms. For example, everyone experiences anxiety before an exam. Mild anxiety can improve performance, which is normal, but when anxiety becomes persistent, excessive, and interferes with daily functioning, it may meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. It may meet. Depression exists on a continuum ranging from temporary sadness to severe major depressive disorder. Epidemiological. Epidemiological refers to the study of the distribution, frequency, cases, and risk factors of diseases or disorders within populations. In psychopathology, abnormal psychology, epidemiological studies help determine how common mental disorders are, that is prevalence, how many new cases occur over time, incidence, which populations are most affected, risk, and protective factors. For example, an epidemiological study may find that anxiety disorders are more common among women than men, or that depression is more prevalent among young adults. If you are to look at the family tree sibling position, who do you think is more likely to have an anxiety disorder? Is it firstborns? Is it lastborns? And if yes, if it's firstborns, is it firstborn girls or firstborn boys? And if it's lastborns, what do you think the criteria would be? I personally think a second generation firstborn who is a lastborn may develop anxiety disorders. That is if the age gap between the firstborn and the lastborn is 3 years or more, because now that lastborn starts operating like a firstborn. That's what I think. But if the difference between the firstborn and the lastborn is months or a year, not really. And do you think a middle child is bound to develop anxiety-related disorders just by them being a middle? I'm forgetting the word to use. Just by virtue of them being a middle child? I don't think so. I think middle children, they just do whatever it is they want to do. They take risks. Then we've done that of young adults. So you need to remember the who, where, when, and why of mental disorders. Comorbidity is a very, very common term you hear every day in psychiatry, psychology. I think especially psychiatry, especially if you're doing psychometrics. Comorbidity is the presence of 2 or more disorders or illnesses occurring in the same individual at the same time. Comorbidity is common in mental health and can complicate diagnosis and treatment. For example, a person with major depressive disorder also has generalized anxiety disorder. A person with alcohol use disorder also has post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. A person with schizophrenia develops substance use disorder. I also think somebody with schizophrenia can develop paranoid personality disorder. It's paranoid personality disorder, right? I really think they can. I also think someone with schizophrenia may develop alcohol use disorder. And I also think someone with schizophrenia may have post-traumatic stress disorder. Because I'm thinking, it's almost like I really like dealing with schizophrenia. Because I've been like this since my undergraduate. I also feel like someone with schizophrenia developing post-traumatic stress disorder may have been somebody who's been in a war zone, either lived there, or this may have been a soldier. I also think somebody who has been brought up in a very, very violent family may have schizophrenia and post-traumatic stress disorder. I also think somebody with major depressive disorder may develop Alzheimer's, dementia, all of that. I also think someone with schizophrenia can very strongly develop Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of that. I really think. I also think someone with schizophrenia can develop amnesia, or can have. Those are just my thoughts. High comorbidity is one limitation of the DSM-5 TR because overlapping symptoms can make diagnosis more difficult. In the second video, I believe it was now long form answers to questions in abnormal psychology exams, there was what are the limitations of the DSM-5 TR, and that is one of them, comorbidity. Psychotic. Psychotic refers to a state in which a person loses contact with reality. Psychosis is characterized by symptoms such as hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, grossly disorganized behavior. Psychosis is a symptom, not a diagnosis. And as I read about psychosis, I'm thinking of catatonic, and I had not put catatonic in this list. So I'll just put it on the screen as I talk about catatonic, catatonia, because I'm not ending this video to go right about catatonia or catatonic, then come and do another video and then put it together. I do not feel like getting into a video editor. For example, on psychosis, a man hears voices commanding him to harm himself even though no one is speaking, auditory hallucination. Another example is believing that strangers on television are sending secret messages directly to him, delusion. There is a series I watched, I think it was a Korean series. It was about this priest who it got to a point, he was arrested and now he began having psychosis. He sees an image on the wall, he thinks that's Jesus. He sees the sunlight through the clouds, and to him, that's like God is coming down. It's the last day. What was it called? When the trumpets, they say the trumpets would blow or something. People, when you look at the sky and you see shapes, it does not mean you're going through psychosis, But then there is an extent. I'm going to put the word on the screen. I forgot what the word is. I came across it on Tumblr. I put the word on the screen. So another example is believing that strangers on television are sending secret messages directly to him, delusion. Conditions associated with psychosis include schizophrenia, bipolar disorder with psychotic features, major depressive disorder with psychotic features, substance-induced psychosis, hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is a state of heightened physical and emotional alertness following exposure to a traumatic event. It is one of the core symptom clusters of post-traumatic stress disorder PTSD. Symptoms: hypervigilance, constantly scanning for danger, exaggerated startle response, irritability or anger, difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating. For example, a survivor of a serious road traffic accident becomes extremely startled by loud noises and constantly checks mirrors while driving because they feel unsafe. SSRIs. In one of the previous videos, but not the first one, I said when we are looking at abnormal psychology vocabulary, we will look at what SSRIs mean in food. And SSRIs mean selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are a class of antidepressant medications that increase the availability of serotonin, a neurotransmitter involved in regulating mood, anxiety, appetite, and sleep. They work by blocking the reuptake of serotonin into nerve cells, allowing more serotonin to remain available in the synaptic space. Common selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Am I even allowed to say that on YouTube? I'd rather not. I don't think I should. So, conditions treated. SSRIs are commonly prescribed for major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, social anxiety disorder. For example, a patient diagnosed with major depressive disorder is prescribed sertraline together with cognitive behavior therapy to help reduce symptoms of depression. Now I'm having this dilemma. Should I actually give examples of common SSRIs or not? But I've already mentioned sertraline over there. SSRIs are often the first-line pharmacological treatment for depression and many anxiety disorders because they are generally effective and have a more favorable side effect profile than older antidepressants. And I have a summary table of all these 6 terminologies on Canva. It's a free template. You can go see it. It's term, definition, example. And so it's like continuum, epidemiological, comorbidity, psychotic, hyperarousal, SSRIs. So that I have that on Canva. And then later on, I thought of 2 other vocabularies which you have: enduring and situational. So enduring means long-lasting, stable, and persistent over time. In psychology, an enduring pattern is one that begins in adolescence or early adulthood and remains relatively consistent across different situations and throughout life. Kind of similar to continuum, kind of similar. In the DSM-5 tier, personality disorders are described as enduring patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving because they are deeply ingrained and affect many areas of a person's life. Characteristics: long-term and chronic, present in many situations: home, school, work, relationships, difficult to change, part of the person's personality. For example, a woman with avoidant personality disorder has feared rejection since her teenage years. She avoids making friends, refuses promotions that require teamwork, and keeps away from family gatherings because she believes people will criticize her. This pattern has persisted for many years and affects all aspects of her life. Another example is a man with obsessive compulsive personality. So let me remember that OCPD and OCD are different. Is excessively perfectionist at work, at home, and in social activities. His need for order has been present since early adulthood. Enduring, in short, is long-term personality pattern. Situational means that a behavior or symptom occurs only in specific circumstances or situations. Like you remember anxiety, social anxiety, rather than being present all the time. Situational symptoms are usually triggered by particular event, environment, or stressor. Characteristics are temporary or context-specific, triggered by certain situations, may disappear when the situation changes, does not affect every aspect of life. For example, a student with social anxiety disorder feels calm when talking to close friends, but experiences intense fear, sweating, trembling, and a racing heart when giving a presentation in class. The anxiety occurs only during situations where the student fears being judged. Another example would be a person experiences anxiety only when flying on airplanes, but functions normally in all other situations. This is a situational fear rather than a pervasive personality trait. And that second one for the plane is we were given a case study to do in class, and that's like part of the case study we did. I also have a comparison table on enduring versus situational, and it's a free template on Canva. The reason I'm making all these free templates is because I want to run and make the template. Now, I have all this in my documents. I go on Canva and I'm making the templates, and I remember everything I have read. It sticks. I came and filmed a video while reading the notes and explaining more. Then I went on Canva and then I made the templates. So I hope this has been helpful for somebody out there who is getting into abnormal psychology, whether as an undergraduate or a graduate student. I think what I have done is a bit too low for PhD level. But when I was in my undergraduate, this is how I was taught. I was taught my undergraduate like a master's student, and that is why even when I'm reading, I'm thinking of other things. That's what I'm reading, and I'm like cyclothymia, enduring, continuum. Yeah. Now time to go do another subject, and then I will get to the past papers for the podcast. I'll just put the podcast generally in the description box of all these videos in this series, this 7-part video series, but 8-part total series. And you can go listen to my old podcast episode that I did years and years ago. Bye.